Shalom and welcome to the Practical Parsha. This week is Parashat Tazria. Okay, so that's chapter 12 in the book of Vayikra. That's the book of Leviticus. In our book, it's on page 284. Now, Parashat Tazria more often comes together with the following Parsha, which is Mitzorah, which actually is the same, thematically they speak about the same thing, more or less. Okay? Most of Parashat Tazria, when I say most of it, I mean literally beginning from the 9th verse into the Parsha, all the way through the entire Parsha, speaks about the laws of the Tum'ah. Tum'ah means the impurity of Mitzorah. Okay, Mitzorah, Tzarat, is, I guess I should say, typically, like most people, translated as leprosy, which it's not. Leprosy is a disease, is an illness, versus Tzarat, which is a spiritual affliction. It just comes out in a physical manner. The next Parsha, next week, Parshat Mitzorah, speaks about the healing process, meaning the purification process that comes after one has gone through the period of the impurity. Okay? But we're not going to focus on that. That's actually one of the most difficult, complicated matters in the Torah in terms of knowing and understanding all the details, which I have to say honestly, I do not. Okay? I'm not well versed in it. What I do want to focus is on the initial discussion in the Parsha, which is right in the beginning. And let's start from the beginning. It says, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, speak to Bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel saying, when a woman conceives and gives birth to a male child, she will be ritually unclean for 7 days. As the days of a menstrual flow, she will be unclean. So what it's telling us is that by childbirth, the woman becomes unclean, and then it continues. If you look at verse 4, and notice that I just skipped a verse. Verse 4 says, for 33 days she will remain in this status that the blood she sees is ritually pure, meaning even if she sees blood, it doesn't make her impure, which typically she would become. And then it goes on to what happens if she gives birth to a female. It's double that time. It's not for a total of 40 days, but 80 days. And then afterwards, how she ends this period, which is with bringing, if you look at verse 6, when the days of her purification are completed, be it for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb in the first year as a burnt offering, right, and a young pigeon and turtle dove as a sin offering, okay, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, which is the tabernacle, to the Kohen, to the priest. And basically, this is the whole process of childbirthing. It wasn't just, hello, you get your 6 weeks of leave and you're back to work. Oh, no. There's an impure time period, there's a time of pure period, then she has to go through the purification process, which is mikvah and so on, and then she comes to the holy temple to offer two offerings, an offering of thanks and an offering of, as you saw over here, a sin offering, which is very interesting. Why would she have to bring a sin offering? What exactly is it that she did wrong? And this is, I think, a tremendous lesson, and I wasn't going to focus on it, but it just comes to mind, and it's really important, especially for our times. Rashi actually quotes the Talmud, explaining what this sin offering is all about. And that is that in the process of child labor, which, again, as a male, I have no real idea what it is, and I have to say, I guess us males couldn't handle it. And that's why God didn't give it to us. Okay, and as you're going to see, that the woman, while she's giving birth, apparently that God knows, and He knows very well because He can hear everything. And He knows that while she's giving birth and going through that labor pain, she actually makes a vow, or at least she says the word. She doesn't really mean it, but she says the words that she swears that she'll never have a child again. Okay? She doesn't want to go through this again. However, after the pain subsides and she has a little child and this period of time passes, she has no intention of keeping that vow. Why? Because the way Hashem made a woman, and thank God He did, otherwise you and I wouldn't be here, is that mom, had a typical healthy woman, has the motherly instinct. And she cannot help herself. She quickly forgets the pain. She quickly forgets the pain. Okay? And since she quickly forgets the pain, she is going to breach that vow. Now, truth be said, it is not a full-fledged vow because it was made under duress, and it wasn't made with full intent and with the full capacity of mind that one would be
was not
obligated
premeditated
to keep their vow or to go through the proper process of annulling the vow. But in some level, she said the words and she's breaching it with, I think, good reason and good intent. So Hashem says, part of the process, we'll throw it in sin offering. Okay? But that's not what I was going to focus on. I was going to focus on verse 3. Verse 3 says, on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. If I had to make a joke, I'd say, God says, we'll balance it out. She went through so much pain. Let's give him a little pain. And the female, she's going to have time for it. No, that's not what it is. Actually, first and foremost, it's important to point out, to note, that it's not the typical manner in which the Torah speaks. The Torah doesn't jump from one topic to another. Oh, by the way, we got this. No. We're talking about the woman giving birth, whether it's a male or female, and we suddenly just, we divert, at least for one verse, and we go to the mitzvah of Brit Milah, of circumcision. And then we jump right back. It doesn't seem right if one really follows the pattern of how the Torah typically delivers a message. So the question is, why is it being done this way? And we can understand from this that the circumcision is part of the birthing process. In other words, what happens when a Jewish child is born? When a Jewish child is born, it's not just a physical body that came into the world, but it's something very, very special. A neshama, a soul, the soul of a Jew came into the world. For the beginning, it's going to be in the body of a little child, but it's going to grow into a full-fledged Jew, which is going to do the mitzvot and have his or her impact on the world. For the female, practically speaking, as soon as her name is given to her, which is typically you do it as soon as possible, some do it even immediately by the first Torah reading. Let's say if a child is born on Monday, she can get her name within an hour or two of her being born. Or at most, some people wait until the following Shabbat, so within a week or so. As soon as she gets her Hebrew name, her soul is already in her body. Her Jewish soul has been invited fully and operationally and actively in her body. And it culminates with the bat mitzvah. That's when it's in its full-fledged form. By the boy, it happens by the Brit Milah, by the circumcision. Thus, when the Torah is speaking about a boy being born, it has to mention the circumcision. Because it's talking about being born. He's not fully born as a Jew unless he has a circumcision. It just is a little delay. So actually, it's interesting, the female gets it earlier. And she also gets to be bat mitzvah earlier, at the age of 12, versus the boys at the age of 13. It's because women are more mature. That's what they say. Anyway, so, it is true, actually. By the way, on this note, if the boy needs a circumcision to be connected to Hashem, why is it that the girl doesn't need it? And the answer is, and this is really true, and us men have a lot to look up to when it comes to that, and we find it throughout the generations, especially soon we're going to approach the holiday of Pesach, Passover festival, and you find it again and again. When it came to that, it came to the giving of the Torah, and so on and so forth. The woman is always more in tune, naturally, to godliness. She's almost like predisposed to that divine connection. So she doesn't need all these extra things. In fact, the Talmud says, quote, a woman when she's born, she's as if she's circumcised already. So for the man, you have to actually do something in order to make it happen. For the woman, it's already happening. It's already ticking from within inside. And it's true that women have an instinctive, deeper connection to God than men do. Men can reach that, but they have to go through a process. They have to work on it. They have to actually make it happen. Okay, and we see it right here and there. So we've covered that, why the Torah seems to deviate and jump off to another topic. But being that it does say it, we do learn the mitzvah of circumcising a boy at age 8 days old. Now, the mitzvah is that it should be done at 8 days, not before. You do it before, what you're doing is you're cutting skin. You're hurting the child. You're giving him surgery. Call it whatever you want, but it's not the Brit Milah. In the hospitals over here, many times they come around, they offer you one circumcision, they have a doctor come in and do it, and they do it at day 3, day 4. That's a surgery. That's no different than cutting one's skin. That is not the Brit Milah. In the event, I just want to mention, in the event that one had a Brit Milah that manner, then they still need to go through the ritual of at least letting some blood for the sake of the mitzvah, which is 8 days plus, and many times people find out in a later age that, wow, I never really had a real Brit Milah. There's nothing more to cut because it's been all cut off, okay, which we'll get to in a moment. But the mitzvah has never really been done. It has to be done on 8 days. Now, when I said before, I said 8 days plus, because there are instances when Jewish law not only says you could, but Jewish law says you must push off, you must delay the actual circumcision process. And that may be if a child is not well, if a child is premature, if a child is jaundiced, okay, that typically can happen. I even recently have been, and this was for me the first time in my life, I've been by an actual Brit Milah. I mean, the place was set up, people were there, the guests were invited, there was food, and took the baby's diaper off. The mohel, who is the guy who does, the man, the rabbi, who was trained to do it. I'm not trained to do it, so you don't want me doing your baby? Nah. And the rabbi took one look and says, I'm sorry, I'm not performing the Brit Milah today. And guess what? No one was angry. Everybody thanked him. Did the right thing. So we had extra breakfast. We're there already, right? And it's not easy. I had to be, have the guts to do what's right. But according to halakha, you never, ever, ever endanger anyone's or risk anyone's health, especially a little baby. So better push it off. And to quote Maimonides says, you can always delay the mitzvah, but you can never bring back a life. You can never bring back a soul that gets lost. And in this case, if you, God forbid, put the child's life in danger, you are now endangering something far more important. And it's very interesting that the 8th day, and perhaps if we have the time, we'll talk about it later in the class, the 8th day carries a very, very special power. Very, 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 I'll call it the supernatural power, according to the Kabbalah. And the question really becomes, what happens in the event that the halacha mandates that the child's Brit Milah, the actual circumcision ceremony, needs to be delayed? Does the child lose that element of, wow, the 8th day? And there's a whole beautiful talk from the Rebbe, which is put in already to essay form, edited by the Rebbe, that actually explains no. As long as you are behaving and acting in accordance with halakha, which is you pushed it off for that good reason, it's as if that 8th day is stretching all the way. So you still get the benefit of that and following the halakha, not endangering the child's life, and that all comes together. Okay? So the 8th day, let's read it inside. On the 8th day, the flesh of the foreskin shall be circumcised. Note that it says on the 8th day. Okay? It doesn't say on the 8th. So let me share with you. We learn out from this very, very important halakha, very important law when it comes to detailed law, when it comes to the circumcision of a baby, that in order for it to be kosher, meaning to be fit, to be effective, it needs to be done during the daytime, not the nighttime. During the daytime, meaning anywhere past sunrise, from past sunrise and up to sunset. Okay, and this actually brings to a very interesting discussion, because it can only be done during the day, it cannot be done at night. Imagine if it was done at night, again, you were just cutting skin, you would maybe remove the foreskin, but the actual ritual hasn't been done because it wasn't done at the right time. That's like keeping Shabbat on Thursday. Maybe you rested, but you didn't keep Shabbat. You know what I'm saying? It's Thursday. You did no mitzvah with that. And you need to go ahead and do it. In this case, you can no longer cut. There's nothing to cut. You have to let some blood, which is the same thing that's done for somebody who converts, or like I said, in the case of somebody who had a Brit Milah, which was not done in the manner that the ritual calls for. So here's an interesting discussion, and especially coming up to Pesach, we learn out from what the Torah says, Ushmartem et hamatzot. Ushmartem et hamatzot means, literally, you should safeguard the matzot. Meaning, you should not allow it to become leaven. Don't let it sit around, don't let it delay and become leaven. Mm-hmm. The word matzot, with slightly different vowels, could also be read mitzvot. So it's also telling us, and both are true, it's telling us you should safeguard the mitzvot. What does that mean? The sages teach us that means that whenever you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, don't allow it to sit there and get leavened. Don't allow it to be delayed. Zirizim, magdimim mitzvot, those eager, meaning those who are involved in mitzvot, what they usually do is they are more in haste to accomplish the mitzvah. You don't delay the mitzvah. Thus, typically, what you'll find is that the Brit Milah, the circumcision, is done usually in the morning hours, right? Because since you can do it from sunrise, okay, you don't expect the mom who just gave birth and little baby to be rudely awakened, with sunrise and start cutting a kid. But somewhere in the morning hours, you do it, after the morning prayers, after the shacharit, they do the circumcision. However, and I myself have been a guest. When I say guest, I have to actually, I was going to say invited guest, but take a note of that. We're going to explain soon why you do not invite to a Brit Milah, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. I've been a guest to Brit Milah, which has been done in the afternoon, in the evening. Imagine now, we look outside, it's not 7 o'clock, it's not 6 o'clock yet, it's still day. Once you have daylight savings time, sun doesn't set until 7:30, right? So you can actually do the Brit Milah at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and have a beautiful dinner, evening, right? And that is actually an interesting point. And the question is, should it be delayed? Can it be delayed? When can it not? And how explain? Ideally, like I said, mitzvah should be done at the first possible opportunity. However, when there is good reason, good merit to delay the mitzvah. Now, what would warrant a good reason, a good merit? Something which is in, quote-unquote, the better interest of the mitzvah, or of God who gave us the mitzvah, meaning it brings more honor to the mitzvah. For example, if I do the mitzvah now, I'll get it done. If I do it a little later, I can get it done better, nicer. Then obviously now that's reason to override the do it immediately and do it later. You want to do it better. Okay? In this case, and the argument is, and it's an accepted argument, is if, for example, when you do the Brit Milah, if you did it in the evening, there will be a larger attendance, a nicer crowd, therefore a nicer, a nicer environment, and one that brings more honor and more joy to the mitzvah, then obviously that's good reason to push it off to the end of the day. And in cases, let's say, for example, a rabbi in a Chabad house somewhere, living out in, call it boondocks, right? You call people to come on, not too many people are going to take off work in the morning on a regular weekday and just come to join a Brit Milah. And if they do, they're going to be 1 foot out the door, right? Yeah. Versus if you do it in the evening, they'll finish their day, they can plan their day, they come and sit and have a nice dinner and be inspired and so on. Makes a whole lot of a difference. Kids are after school, there's no carpool anymore, so you understand that puts a lot of weight.
Give a lot more value
to the mitzvah. So then, of course, you're doing it in honor of the mitzvah, not because you're procrastinating. Okay? That's as far as the day is concerned. Just historically, the only time the Jewish people did the Brit Milah, the circumcision, at night, and there's an explanation how that was possible, and technically speaking, it was before the Torah was actually given, before this was actually said, was on the night they left Egypt. Remember that on the eve of Passover, which is the 14th of Nisan, they had to offer the Passover sacrifice, roast it, and eat it at night. Like we do at the Seder, we don't eat the Passover sacrifice, we eat a piece of matzah to remember it, to commemorate the afikoma, if you remember, to remember it. But the rule is that any male that's uncircumcised cannot eat from it. And they were told to circumcise, but some of them maybe didn't realize how important it is, or didn't go ahead and circumcise themselves. They figured, hey, we're leaving tonight. can't go on this long trip, just with a little surgery. It's just not going to be a comfortable ride, and it's not a ride. We're going to be walking. You know what I mean? It's not something we want to do. But it says in the Midrash that Hashem, God, he pulled all the plugs on the wind from all four corners of the world. And for Moshe's Passover sacrifice, roasted lamb.
Nice.
I'm hungry already. He made the aroma just start to spread in all the neighborhoods where the Jews lived. And people came running, Moshe, we want a piece of that. I mean, it says...
He was intoxicating.
I'm quoting the Midrash. It says they were tired. They became, I guess in English you would say, intoxicated from the aroma. And Moshe said, well, you guys circumcised? And he says, no. And it says they went right then and there and they circumcised all that night. Okay? Okay?
I'll do whatever to get a piece of that.
Yeah. Obviously you understand that. I'm sure there was also like a spiritual pull in there.
Well, of course.
It wasn't just to eat a piece of lamb. But the idea is that was the only time historically that we know, and that it was not only that it was done, but it was also effective. Because if it wasn't effective, then they couldn't eat from the Passover. If it wasn't, it was halachically effective that they made a Brit Milah on themselves, many of them. That's really heroic on the night of Passover. But moving forward. I did mention something, and I'm going to start backwards. But I said I remember I said I was a guest, and I said I'm specifically not saying I was an invited guest. So here's a very interesting custom when it comes to a Brit Milah ceremony, and that is that you don't invite people. Typically, you'll see anybody who's aware of this, anybody who does it according to Jewish tradition, proper Jewish tradition, unless they're unaware. I'm not in any way negating anyone or knocking anyone, but it typically will not say, you are invited. It would just say, notice, we're hereby notifying you that the Brit of our son will be on such and such date, in such and such time, such and such place. What is the reason for that? Well, the reason for that is Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi. And let me now explain. Eliyahu Hanavi, and typically you'll see in every synagogue, most established synagogues, or if not, people bring it, and if not, they'll use a special chair and they'll call it the chair of Elijah. Right? Kisei shel Eliyahu Hanavi. This guy's got a lot of chairs all over town. But that's something special. What is this thing about Eliyahu Hanavi, the connection of Elijah the prophet, and the Brit Milah? And because of that connection, you don't invite to a Brit Milah. Because imagine, I am invited to a Brit Milah where Eliyahu Hanavi is going to be, and for some reason, I turn down the invitation, or I fail to show up. That's a slight to the honor of Eliyahu Hanavi. Okay, that's something that's detrimental for myself. And therefore, we don't officially invite, we just notify. It's technically an invitation, but really it's not as exclusive as a bar mitzvah or wedding that you're expected that only if you're directly invited you come, not that you happen to know that it's taking place. And this is specifically because of Eliyahu Hanavi's presence. And we honor his presence with a special chair, or at least a designated chair. It could be any chair, but a designated chair. And the question is why? Or what? What is this all about? And this takes us back to a very dark time in Jewish history. You know, we think of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. We think of, wow, damn, such a prophet like Elijah, almost like Moses. And they must have been, no. Most of the Jewish people at the time were, sadly, terrible sinners. Worshipped idols. The king at the time was Achav, the king of Israel. When I say the king of Israel, I mean of the 10 tribes, not the king of Judah. And they did terribly wicked things, as, just to quote the verse, anything to anger or that angers God. That's how bad it was. Elijah the prophet had the thankless job of coming to the people and trying to appeal to them and trying to reprove them and to chastise them and to tell them, listen, you're doing the wrong thing, you got to change your ways, you got to change your ways. And of course, they gave him a run for it. You know what I mean? There were times even when Achav and Izebel Okay, his wife, they wanted him dead. And there was a bounty on his head. Literally. You think about what? Yes, that was the case. And he had to be in hiding to that extent, just to save his skin. But there was one time when he was telling God, he was so upset, he was so disappointed with the Jewish people, with the bulk of them, that he said to Hashem, he said, God, it is so bad, it is so terrible, that they even failed to circumcise their children. It's that's the last line to cross. Stop that. That tradition has never been broken. They even do. And Hashem took issue with that.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, you're speaking bad about my children. That is not true. That is not the case. That line has not been crossed, and that line will never be crossed. But because you gave this, I want to say, false testimony, I'm going to make you be witness to the fact that Jews do keep this, no matter what level these Jews are on, meaning no matter how pious they are and how little of observance they have in their lives, but when it comes to this fundamental, no one cuts corners on this. And you're going to have to be present perpetually till the end of time by every Brit Milah, by every circumcision. So Eliyahu obviously doesn't have a choice to accept or not, but his complaint was that this is, how do they call it? This is cruel and unjust punishment. Why? Because now he's going to be subjected to be present at every Brit Milah, regardless of who the people are, regardless of who the father is, regardless of who the attendees are, regardless of who the rabbi circumcising. And he's going to have to be there in the presence of many, many sinners, people who are full of wrongdoing, and he can see it. So this is torture. This is outright torture. This is a terrible punishment. And he complained about it to Hashem. So Hashem said, good. I'll tell you what. Anybody that shows up to a Brit Milah, anybody that is present when you're there, automatically their sins are atoned for. Are forgiven. So you're not going to have to be here to be in the presence of bad people. You're not going to see any bad. It's all going to be wiped away. And that is what makes attending a Brit Milah very, very, very special. In fact, I have to tell you, I met he's no longer with us, he's passed on, but several years ago, a friend of mine who lives in Miami Beach, his wife's grandfather was a survivor from the war. And after his retirement, he lived obviously in a place where this is more, let's just say, more available. You know, living in Brooklyn, in Borough Park, you just need to know how to find out. But you're going to have a Brit Milah every day of the week somewhere. Okay? And towards the end of his life, he made it a point every day to be at a Brit Milah. It wasn't because he liked to eat the tuna fish or get some good whitefish salad. It was because of that reason. He wanted to have that. You know, he knew he's not going to live forever. And I guess what went through his mind is, imagine if I can be every day in the presence of Eliyahu Hanavi. So that's something very, very special. You should know. That's why whenever one knows of a Brit Milah, it's important to try to be there. The joy of a Brit Milah is so great that, say there's a Brit Milah taking place in the synagogue today, we don't recite the regular confessional during the regular weekday prayers. In other words, it's almost like a quasi-festival. Has already a festive atmosphere. It becomes almost like equivalent to the Rosh Chodesh day or the intermediate days of the holidays, where it's like you don't say the confessional, you know, certain parts of the prayer are omitted because just as it typically would be done would be on those festive days. It's a very special time. In fact, you know, people who are directly associated with the father, the person who's holding the baby, which we'll talk about in a moment, they wear their Shabbat garb. They dress formally because this is a special occasion, something very, very special. This is also when the boy's going to get his name. Now, speaking of that, that is called the sandak. The sandak is the person who is honored with holding the baby. The person who's honored with holding the baby while he's being brought, as we say, under the wings of the Shekhinah, of God's presence. This is a very special thing. And typically, you honor, many families, you honor a grandfather, but if not, it's considered to be one of those sigulot. Sigula means a good luck charm or an omen for riches. In fact, there are many rich people